Maya was a quiet girl who lived with her mother in a small room behind a large house where her mother worked as a maid, and every morning before sunrise, Maya helped her mother prepare breakfast for the house staff. Then she walked with her small bag toward the garden where she liked to sit before going to school because the air there felt clean and soft, and it made her heart feel light even when life felt heavy inside their tiny home. She was kind by nature and found joy in small things like picking flowers or blowing bubbles that she kept in a small plastic bottle her mother had bought for her on her birthday, and that bottle was always in her bag because she believed bubbles could make any sad moment feel gentle again. Meanwhile, inside the main house lived a young boy named Armin who was around 8 years old and who hardly spoke to anyone after a sudden shock he had faced some months earlier. His father was a powerful billionaire named Mr. Ahill who owned many companies across the city, and people everywhere knew his name. But inside his own house, he struggled with the fear of losing his son to silence because Armin stayed alone most of the time, curled in corners or staring out of windows without saying a single word, and no doctor had been able to help him speak again. Whenever someone tried to come close, he froze and shrank away, as if the world felt too sharp around him. On one warm afternoon, Maya was passing through the big garden carrying a tray of clean cloths for her mother. When she heard soft muffled sounds coming from the far corner near the tall trees, she paused and walked slowly because the sound felt like someone trying not to cry. And when she got closer, she saw Armin sitting on the ground, his knees hugged to his chest, his breath shaking and his small hands trembling while his eyes looked scared of something she could not see. Maya stood still for a moment because she knew she should not approach the family members without being called, but something in her heart told her the boy needed someone, so she gently placed the tray on a stone bench and stepped a little closer, speaking softly as she asked if he was all right. Armin did not answer, but his breathing grew faster and fear filled his face, as if he wanted to run yet could not move. Maya remembered how her mother always said that kindness sometimes speaks louder than words, so she slowly reached into her bag and took out the bubble bottle. She opened it and lifted the small wand. Then she blew a soft, slow breath. A cluster of round, shining bubbles floated into the air, catching the sunlight and breaking into soft colors of blue, pink, and gold. Armin blinked once, then again, his eyes following the floating bubbles as they rose and drifted gently above him. Maya smiled and blew another stream, this time letting more bubbles float higher, some touching the leaves while others danced around the boy. He lifted his head slightly and watched the bubbles move with slow, calm circles, as if the world around him had softened for the first time in months. Maya sat down a little distance from him, not too close and not too far, and blew more bubbles, letting them cover the space between them. Armin stretched his hand toward one bubble, and when it touched his finger, it burst quietly, but he did not pull his hand back. Instead, he looked at Maya with a small, confused expression that carried a spark of interest, like a door slowly opening inside him. Maya kept blowing bubbles, each one carrying a little piece of peace, and the boy kept watching them, his breathing slowly returning to normal. Little by little, his fingers relaxed, and the fear on his face eased. Maya continued because she could see this simple thing was helping him, and the garden soon filled with soft, drifting bubbles that made the sunlight shimmer gently through the air. Neither of them noticed that someone else was watching from the balcony above, standing behind the half-open door. Mr. Ahill had been on a business call when he saw his son run out into the garden in a panic, and he had followed quietly, worried he might harm himself or fall. But what he saw made him freeze in place, as his strong, proud heart softened more than had in years. There below in the garden, his silent, broken son sat calmly, for the first time in months, watching a maid's daughter blow bubbles with a peaceful smile, as if the world had finally found a way to reach him again. Mr. Ahill watched them without moving, unable to believe that something so simple could bring such change, and he felt something warm rise in his chest, a mix of hope and gratitude and confusion, because no doctor had succeeded in calming his son, yet this small girl with a gentle nature had done something no one else could. He watched Maya blow another line of bubbles, her face full of innocence, her posture gentle and patient, and he saw his son raise his hand again, trying to catch the bubbles with small, careful motions, as if afraid they might break the moment if he moved too fast. Armin let out the faintest sound, not a full word, but a tiny soft breath that carried life, and it made Mr. Ahill's eyes widen because it was the first time he had heard his son make any sound beyond a whisper in so long. Maya smiled when she heard it and spoke again in her soft, warm voice, telling him that bubbles do not judge and do not rush, they just float and wait and rest wherever the wind carries them. The boy looked at her, and for the first time, his eyes did not show fear, only calm curiosity. And Mr. Ahill felt a deep ache inside him, a mix of pride and guilt, because he realized how lost his son had been, and how blind he himself had been to the small, gentle things that could bring him comfort. He stepped back quietly, not wanting to disturb the scene, and decided he would watch from a distance for now, because something truly important was happening in that garden, something that might change his son's life, and he did not want to interrupt it in any way. He only knew one thing for sure: the Maid's daughter had done something remarkable without even knowing he was watching, and the story of that moment was only just beginning. The next morning, Maya woke before the sun, as she always did, and helped her mother prepare the kitchen for the long day ahead. After placing the clean dishes on the shelf, she picked up her small bag and slipped the bubble bottle inside, remembering how it had helped the quiet boy in the garden the day before. She did not know why he had looked so scared or why he barely spoke, but she felt a soft pull in her heart that made her want to help him again, even if she was just a maid's daughter in a huge house where everyone walked with purpose and rules. Meanwhile, in his large room, Armin sat on the edge of his bed holding a small wooden toy his father had given him long ago. He turned it slowly in his hands, not because he wanted to play, but because it was the only thing that made him feel safe sometimes. But today his mind kept going back to the bubbles he had seen floating in the garden, the soft colors, the light, gentle way they touched his hands without hurting him, the sound of Maya's calm voice telling him that bubbles move slowly, like the heart learning to breathe again. Something inside him felt different, not healed, but not fully afraid. The same morning, Mr. Ahill sat in his office drinking tea while thinking about what he had witnessed yesterday. The image of his son reaching toward the bubbles stayed in his mind like a quiet echo, and he wondered how such a simple thing had opened a door no medicine or doctor had managed to open. He had spent months trying to help his son recover after the sudden loss of someone dear to the boy, someone he could not speak about without trembling, and now here was a child who did not even belong to their world, calming him without any effort or plan. He decided he needed to observe this again before making any choice, so he canceled his morning meetings and moved to the balcony quietly to watch the garden. Once more, after finishing her chores, Maya stepped outside carrying a small basket of cloths her mother needed dried in the sun. She walked to the same corner of the garden and placed the basket carefully on the grass. When she looked up, she saw Armin standing a few steps away, his eyes not on the ground but on her bag. It surprised her, because he had never come close to anyone without fear. She smiled gently and asked him if he wanted to sit. He did not answer, but he slowly walked closer and sat on the grass, keeping a small space between them, just like yesterday, as if he trusted her, but still needed distance. Maya understood his silence and reached into her bag. Bringing out the bubble bottle, she opened the lid and blew a stream of bubbles into the air. They floated slowly, rising with the light morning breeze, and Armin watched them. Immediately, his shoulders relaxing a little. She blew more, and the bubbles drifted around them, touching the grass and leaves like tiny soft stars. The boy raised his hand again and gently tapped a bubble, watching it burst before smiling, a tiny, almost hidden smile that Maya caught in the corner of her eye. She felt her heart warm, because she knew any small smile from him was not simple, it was a sign of courage. Mr. Ahill, watching from above, felt a deep ache in his chest again. He had not seen his son smile like that since before the tragedy that had changed everything, and he felt grateful for the maid's daughter, who had somehow touched the part of his son that no adult had been able to reach. After blowing bubbles for a while, Maya put the bottle aside and gently took out a small packet from her bag. It was a set of paper sheets and simple crayons she kept with her to pass time during long waits. She placed the sheets on the grass and asked Armin if he liked colors. He looked at the crayons, then at her, then slowly reached for a blue one and placed it on the paper. Without speaking, Maya smiled and drew a small circle on her paper, then showed him. He looked at her paper, then at his, and slowly traced a circle too, then made another and another, each not perfect but full of effort. She praised him softly, telling him that The circles looked nice, and that he was doing well. The boy looked at his drawing with quiet interest, and for a moment his fear seemed far away above them. Mr. Rahil held the rail tightly, feeling something shift inside him, like a door opening. He had tried art therapy, music therapy, and many special care sessions, but nothing had brought life into his son's eyes like this simple scene on the grass, when Maya began drawing bubbles on the paper and blowing real bubbles at the same time. Armin seemed to follow both with fascination. He even copied her drawing, making small round shapes that looked like the bubbles floating around them. He made a soft sound again, not a clear word, but a soft, happy breath that sounded like a small laugh, and Maya's face lit up with joy seeing him break through the silence bit by bit. She clapped softly and told him he was doing well. Armin looked at her, and for the first time, he moved his lips, as if trying to form a word, but no sound came out. Still, it was enough to make Maya feel hopeful. She leaned a little closer and told him that talking would come when his heart felt ready, and he did not have to rush because she was patient, and he was safe here. The boy nodded slightly, a small, slow nod that surprised even him because he had not responded to anyone with a gesture in many months. Maya continued drawing and blowing bubbles, and every now and then Armin would glance at her and then at the bubbles, as if comparing them. Then he tried to draw a bubble with two hands, using one crayon for the circle and another for the shine inside it. His technique was messy, but full of concentration, and Maya praised him again, telling him it looked beautiful. He looked at his drawing, then at hers, and then pointed at the bubble bottle on the grass. She understood that he wanted more, so she picked it up and blew a long, soft breath, filling the air with bubbles that flew higher this time, catching sunlight in bright colors that made Armin's eyes widen with wonder. Meanwhile, Mr. Rahil had tears forming in his eyes, something he had not allowed in years. He stepped back from the balcony and leaned against the wall, breathing slowly as he fought the wave of emotion rising inside him. Seeing his son slowly return to life felt like watching a lost seed sprout. After endless dry seasons, he knew he needed to meet this girl, thank her, understand why she had such an effect on his son, but he also did not want to scare her or break the gentle bond that was forming between the children. So, he decided he would wait until the right moment arrived. Down in the garden, Maya and Armin sat together in silence, yet it was a warm silence, filled with colors, floating bubbles, and small steps toward healing. And though Maya did not know it, someone powerful was watching her with growing respect and gratitude, and the story between them was only becoming deeper with each bubble she sent into the sky. The next day began with warm sunlight pouring into the large kitchen where Maya and her mother worked, and while her mother cleaned the counters, Maya helped arrange fresh fruit on a tray, her thoughts drifting again toward the boy in the garden. She wondered if he would come today, and if he would sit beside her again like yesterday. She hoped he would not, because she wanted praise, but because she had seen how lonely he felt inside, and she wanted to help him breathe easier, even if only for a short time. When her chores were done, she took her small bag with the bubble bottle, crayons, and paper, then walked toward the garden slowly, her heart full of gentle excitement. Meanwhile, inside the grand house, Armin stood near the window, holding the small drawing he had made with Maya. It was a paper filled with circles and tiny lines that looked like bubbles floating in all directions, and he touched the paper lightly as if the memory attached to it warmed him. He wanted to see the bubbles again. He wanted to hear Maya's soft voice, and even though speaking still felt impossible, he felt safe around her in a way he had not felt in months. He walked toward the door quietly, hoping no one would stop him. His father, Mr. Rahil, watched him from a distance, pretending not to notice because he did not want to break the small courage in his son's steps. He followed slowly, making sure Armin stayed safe, but allowing him the space he needed. Armin reached the garden and saw Maya sitting on the grass near the same tall trees. She looked up and smiled, a bright, gentle smile that made him stop walking for a moment. As if collecting courage, he moved closer and sat down in the same spot as before, a small space between them, but a little less than yesterday, showing how trust sometimes grows in tiny steps. Maya greeted him softly and reached into her bag. Taking out the bubble bottle, she opened it and blew a line of bubbles into the air. They floated in calm curves, catching the morning sun and touching the leaves like small glowing drops. Armin watched them, and his shoulders relaxed just like before. She blew more, and soon the garden began to fill with soft round colors drifting like quiet music around them. After a while, Maya put the bottle down, and pulled out the crayons again. She handed him a green crayon and asked if he wanted to draw something today. He looked at her, then at the paper, then slowly placed the crayon on the sheet and began to draw a line, not straight, not perfect, just a line that slowly curved as if his hand followed the rhythm of the bubbles. Maya praised him gently and began drawing beside him, making simple shapes and soft curves that matched his energy. He copied her movements at first, then slowly started adding his own ideas, like shading the bubbles or drawing a small tree near them. He was still silent, but every now and then a soft breath escaped him, the kind that sounded almost like a quiet laugh, and whenever it happened, Maya's smile grew warmer, because she knew those small breaths were the seeds of healing above them. Mr. Rahil watched from the balcony again, trying to stay hidden because he did not want to disturb a moment. He saw his son draw with focus and joy, something that had been missing for so long, and it made his chest tighten with gratitude and pain. He wondered how much his son had been holding inside, and how something as gentle as bubbles and crayons had helped him open the first door to peace. After a while, Maya took a small folded paper from her bag. It was a little bird she had made the night before. Using a tutorial her teacher showed her, she had made it with Armin in mind, thinking he might like the soft shape of the wings or the simple motion it made. She placed the little bird beside him and said, "This is for you. You can keep it if you like." Armin looked at the bird, then at Maya, then picked it up gently, turning it in his hands. He touched the wings lightly and looked at her again, as if trying to thank her without words. Maya understood and nodded, smiling warmly, telling him she made it for him because she knew he liked calm things. Then she blew another line of bubbles, and one of them floated close to the paper bird, making Armin lift it slightly, as if trying to make it fly in the same direction. He made a soft sound again, a small breath filled with curiosity and wonder, and this time Maya looked at him and asked softly, "Armin, do you want to say something?" He blinked his eyes in surprise because no one had asked him in such a gentle, calm voice before. He looked at her for a long moment, then opened his mouth slightly, as if trying to form a word, but nothing came. He felt a little frustrated, but Maya quickly reassured him, telling him he did not have to speak today. He could speak when his heart felt ready, and that she would still understand him even without words. Hearing this, he felt calmer and looked down at his hands holding the paper bird, and he nodded again, a small, slow nod full of trust and hope. Maya saw the nod and felt something warm fill her eyes, not with sadness, but with quiet pride, because she knew how much strength it took for him to respond. She looked at him and began telling a simple story about a little bird who learned to fly again after being afraid of the sky. Armin listened closely, his eyes following her lips as if her words were shaping pictures in his mind, and when she finished the story, he tapped the bird on his lap as if agreeing with it, slowly learning to fly again. The wind grew a little stronger, and some bubbles drifted higher, and Armin reached out with both hands, trying to catch them, laughing softly, without sound, as he moved his fingers through the air, and for the first time, he did not look like a frightened child. He looked like a child learning joy again. Meanwhile, on the balcony, Mr. Rahil felt tears form in his eyes that he did not bother wiping because the sight before him was too powerful. His son was healing slowly, gently, beautifully, and it was because of one girl who sat on the grass without fear or pride, showing him kindness that came from the heart. He knew he could not stay hidden much longer. He needed to meet her properly, thank her somehow, do something meaningful for her and her mother, but he decided to wait a little more until the right moment, because this gentle bond between the two children was still growing, and he did not want to rush anything down. In the garden, Maya and Armin continued drawing bubbles floating around them like small hopes rising into the sky, and even though neither of them knew it, their quiet companionship was changing everything in ways neither could imagine yet. The next morning the house felt different, as if a soft calm had settled over every wall and corner. Maya finished her chores early because her mother needed to help prepare a special lunch for some guests, so Maya quickly washed her hands, grabbed her small bag with a bubble bottle and crayons, and walked toward the garden, hoping Armin would come again. She had grown fond of him, not like a friend her own age, but like someone who needed gentle care, and she felt happy knowing her simple kindness made his days easier. When she reached the garden, she sat under the tall trees where the grass felt cool and the breeze carried A soft warmth. She waited for a few minutes, drawing small shapes on a piece of paper, and listening to the sound of birds nearby. She wondered if Armin might be late, or if he was having a difficult morning. Then she heard soft footsteps behind her, and turned to see him walking toward her holding the little paper bird she had given him the day before. He walked with a small, determined pace, not fast, not slow, just steady, and full of quiet hope. He sat down beside her, closer than the day before, and looked at her with gentle eyes. Maya smiled and asked him softly if he wanted bubbles today, and he nodded with a shy yet excited look. She opened the bubble bottle and blew a long stream into the air. The bubbles floated higher than before, carried by the warm wind, and Armin lifted his hand, trying to catch them with both hands. He moved carefully, yet freely, enjoying the soft motion of the bubbles drifting around him. His face brightened, and for the first time there was no shadow of fear in his eyes. She blew another line, and laughed softly when one bubble landed on his hair, and sat there for a moment before bursting. Armin gave a small sound, a tiny breath filled with joy, and Maya clapped gently, telling him that he looked very happy today. He nodded, and then pointed at the drawing sheet, as if asking if they could draw again. Maya quickly placed the paper on the grass, and handed him his favorite blue crayon. He began drawing circles again, but this time he added small wings too, some of them making them look like tiny bubble birds floating across the page. Maya praised him and drew beside him, making a bigger bird that looked like it was guiding the smaller ones. Armin watched her and copied her design, adding lines and curves with more confidence than before. Above them on the balcony, Mr. Rahil watched quietly, as he always did. But today his heart felt heavier in a different way. Yesterday, he had decided that he could not stay hidden forever. He needed to speak to the girl, thank her, understand her, and maybe help her in return. But he had waited because he did not want to disturb the fragile space his son found comfort in. Now, as he watched the two children draw bubbles and birds with complete peace, he felt that the right moment had finally come. He stepped away from the balcony, walked down the stairs, and moved toward the garden slowly, without making noise. Maya was busy drawing when she suddenly felt a shadow fall across the grass. She looked up and saw a tall man standing a few steps away, dressed in a clean light shirt with calm eyes that looked gentle yet strong. She recognized him immediately because everyone in the house knew who he was, the owner of the mansion, the powerful businessman, Mr. Rahil. Maya stood up quickly with worry in her eyes, not because she feared him, but because she thought she might have done something wrong. Armin also turned, and when he saw his father, he froze for a moment, not in fear but in uncertainty, as if he did not know whether the moment was good or bad. Rahil raised his hand softly, telling Maya she did not have to stand. He thanked her for looking after his son and for helping him find peace again. His voice was calm, warm, full of sincerity. Maya felt shy and looked down, telling him she had only tried to help because she saw Armin sad. Rahil stepped closer and told her that what she had done was more than help. She had touched a part of his son that no one else could reach, and he was grateful in a way he could not put into words. As he spoke, Armin slowly stood up and held the paper bird in his hand. He looked at his father, then at Maya, then took a small, slow breath, opened his mouth, and tried to speak. The sound that came out was not perfect. It was soft, trembling, almost broken, but it was a sound with meaning. He looked directly at his father and whispered a small word, barely audible, yet full of life. He whispered, Maya. Both Rahil and Maya froze in shock. Rahil felt his heart break open in relief, hearing his son's first word after so many silent months. Maya felt tears fill her eyes because she had not expected him to say her name. She knelt beside him and held his hands gently, telling him she was proud of him and that he was brave. Armin looked at her again, and this time he whispered another word, a small thank you. Though the words were not clear, they were filled with truth. Rahil covered his face for a moment, overwhelmed, then bent down and hugged his son gently. For the first time in many months, Armin did not pull away. He leaned into the hug, holding the paper bird in his small hand as if it was the treasure that helped him find his voice again. Rahil stood up and told Maya that she and her mother would always have a safe place in this home, and that he wanted to support Maya's education and dreams because someone with a heart like hers deserved every chance in life. Maya shook her head shyly, saying she had only wanted to help, but Rahil insisted, telling her that kindness like hers was rare and needed to be honored. Her mother, who had been rushing through the garden looking for her stopped when she saw the scene. She placed her hand over her mouth, tears filling her eyes as she watched her daughter being thanked by the man she served for years. Rahil turned to her and told her she should be proud of her daughter because she had done something priceless. She nodded with gratitude, unable to speak. They all stood together in the warm sunlight, the bubbles floating around them like tiny dreams rising into the sky. And Armin looked at Maya again, holding her hand gently. Then he whispered her name one more time, this time clearer and stronger than before. Maya smiled through her tears and squeezed his hand softly, knowing that his journey toward healing had truly begun, not through medicine or therapy, but through simple moments of kindness, bubbles, and quiet companionship. And as Rahil watched the two children standing together, he understood that sometimes life changes not through grand actions but through small, gentle hearts that choose to care even when no one is watching. And in that moment, he promised himself he would protect this newfound peace for his son and support the girl who had brought light back into their home in ways he would never forget.